Okay. Hello. Our next presenter is Jack Lifton, Senior Advisor of Energy Futures, which trades on the New York Stock Exchange American under the symbol UUUU, as well as the TSX under the symbol EFR. Welcome back, Jack.
Okay. Well, I'm going to try and give a brief description today of the most important company none of you have ever heard of. Okay. And Energy Fuels has been processing uranium ore into yellow cake for 40 years. Its location is 70 miles from the set of Stagecoach, okay, Monument Valley, Utah, and which is slightly west of Newark. Okay, if you've ever been there, it's the reason you can process uranium. There's nothing there. Half the workers are either Ute or Navajo people. Okay, the workers are absolutely in favor of enlarging the facility. The elders of their tribes are a problem. Okay, so in any case, recently a specialty metal company has been described as an American national champion. Okay. I'm not going to mention the name of the company, and I certainly don't agree with the title because it belongs to Energy Fuels. That's our national champion. It is by far the largest producer of yellow cake in the United States. And perhaps, as far as I know, there is no other producer. Okay? Because the site, the mill, that processes uranium ore has a residue thorium, very radioactive, and thorium's decay products include radium, which you'll all recognize. Not something you want done next year. So, I've been there. Some of the people here have been there. It's a very nice facility, very modern, and as a man who was born before the nuclear age, I can tell you that it is state of the art. That's true. I'm older, yes. Okay. Anyway, the I only want to show this one slide because I have a cynical comment. None of you really looks at all these slides. There's too much data on them, and the slides that this company usually uses are so dense with data that even I don't read. Okay, and in a few seconds on the screen, you're not going to pay any attention. Okay, so let's just look at the overall picture here. Now, let's see. Assuming I can read this, excuse me. A leading producer. That's comical. It's the leading producer. Rare earths are something coming up. I'll talk in a second. Heavy mineral sands. I'll explain that to you in a second. Energy fuels. Okay. Now, as I said before, some of you weren't here. The United States is the world's largest user of uranium. We have the largest fleet of civilian power reactors in the world. We have 94 active power plants in the United States, which are nuclear power plants. We use 36 million pounds of yellow cake a year to fuel those reactors. We produce much less than 2 million pounds a year. So that's a problem. Now, I don't understand why people aren't aware of this, but I think that the anti-nuclear bias has caused you to just close your minds to this. Like, we don't care. Shut down. I don't remember the name of the plant that. Okay, so shut that down. Because we can use candles and kerosene lamps. It doesn't make any difference. We're environmentalists, right? Okay. So, in fact, there's no urban area not served by nuclear power. For your information, Los Angeles got the majority of its power from a nuclear plant in Arizona. So all those great environmentalists, they draft their documents by nuclear power light. Okay. The problem is fuel. Fuel is not what's produced at White Mesa Energy Fuels. fuel is produced by specialist companies that convert the yellow cake to uranium metal and then separate the active fissile material, U-235, which is less than 1% of the uranium, uh, and, and into an increased portion of the uranium rod. I believe it's more than 20% power use. Okay. So in the United States, we have a number of companies that are saying, we have found uranium just north of Poughkeepsie, and there's a garbage dump, and there's uranium under it. This is a typical story I hear. Sorry, maybe it's not Poughkeepsie. Could be Tuscaloosa. Okay. So Wyoming's got a lot of uranium. Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico have uranium. Montana has uranium. And of course, Saskatchewan and another country have a lot of uranium. Okay. So Energy Fuels has mines in all those places other than Saskatchewan. Okay. And of course, it produces a million, 1,200,000 pounds of yellow cake in those mines. One of them in Arizona is the highest grade uranium mine anywhere in the Americas. Okay? It is currently being brought back into production by Energy Fuels and will double their capacity within 24 months. I can tell you off the record, and I won't admit that I ever said this, okay? But the governor of one of the states, the state which this mine is, said to the president of Energy Fuels last year, I demand that you not open this mine. The president of Energy Fuels said, okay. He said, I want you to I'll sell you the mine for the net present value because you're confiscating it without authority of law and constitution. That. Okay. So the governor said, what's the price? He said, $2 billion. The governor said, well, maybe we'll. Okay. Now, I want to point out that mine is literally worth $2 billion. It's the property of Energy Fuels. You'll never see that in the balance sheet. Okay. But what is the value of all these properties Energy Fuels owns that can produce uranium? Some of them are not producing because it gets almost all of its feed from its own mines. Okay. That value is billions. It has to be. America is desperately short of uranium. And you're going to say, no, all the power plants are running. No, we buy from the Russians, we buy from Kazakhstan, Australia, Canada, of course, for the moment. Okay, so they declare us, if they don't want to export to us, and we burn 36 million pounds a year. When I say burn, we use it up in power. So far, I haven't heard of a power plant closing for lack of fuel. Keep your eyes open. Because other nations like China are building new reactors at 10 times the speed we have. As you know, it takes 10 years to build a reactor, and it's always 100% overrun in cost because of regulation. Well, I believe we've opened 2 new reactors in the last decade, and we have 94 of them operating. Think about it. We're not replacing them. Okay? Oh, okay, sorry. Anyway, so we need to produce as much uranium as we can in the United States. My question to the, the government of the United States is, do you have enough uranium, domestic uranium, to fuel the fleet, the Navy? I don't know. Okay. So we never hear about that, do we? We talk about oil and gas and coal and solar and wind. We never hear about uranium. Yet we are dependent on it. Okay. You've never heard of Energy Fuels. Why is that? You've heard of some companies that are in other specialty materials that don't matter. I mean, you hear about them all the time. They don't matter. Energy Fuels matters. It is the national champion. We can't do without it. If energy fuels closed, the United States would be in terrible shape. We'd be looking at the clock to see when we were going to run out of nuclear power. Okay, so never heard of it? Pay attention, find out more about it. We're going to be telling you more about it this year, okay? Because one of the problems is that the United States markets and government have completely ignored uranium. So price went down. I think I remember it was 25 bucks a pound or something just a few years ago. Nobody was producing uranium, including energy fuel. I mean, you couldn't. Uranium, their cost price was above that. Okay, except of course the Russians, the Kazakhs, chemical, they were going on. Okay, now the price of uranium went up, and energy fuels has reopened, and it has not only produced 1 million pounds, it has at least that much in inventory right now. Okay, so the capacity of the mill is 8 million pounds a year, 25% of the American demand. Can it get to that level? I don't know. Okay. But it really, we really have to. And if you're going to say, well, you know, this is America, we'll build 10 of those. Will you really? It's the only permitted site in the United States that can process radioactive ore. Only one. And if you're thinking, well, this guy doesn't know about thorium, it's the largest legal thorium depository in the United States. In other words, when they process ore, you produce uranium, and you produce the very radioactive material thorium. Thorium goes to storage, except that the company has now been approached by a group from Lawrence Livermore Laboratory, United States Department of Energy. They're proposing producing medical isotopes there from the radioactive emanations from the thorium. Thorium decays ultimately to radium, but in the process, it produces isotopes that are used in cancer treatment. Okay, and as a chemical engineer, I said to the management, "You think you're going to grab a radium or let's say an actinium atom and you're just going to put it in the bottle?" He said, "No, no. The Lawrence guys are coming out. They're going to build a facility to make to separate radioisotopes. You have to understand, the medical isotopes have short lives. They have to be produced and sent to the hospital right away. We used to get them from Chalk River, Ontario. They stopped making medical isotopes. So dumb government is not just an American specialty, okay? And Ontario is a major producer of nuclear power. I believe half of its power comes from nuclear power. So Ontario, a friend of mine was the president of Ontario Hydro, and I know about it. And I was personally involved when they shut Chalk River down, and we couldn't believe it. I mean, they shut it down as a source of medical isotopes. The U.S. is short medical isotopes. Energy Fuels is sitting there as a repository of material from which you can make medical isotopes. That's a coming business. And again, don't tell anybody I said this, but the president of Energy Fuels told me he could foresee that medical isotopes was a bigger revenue earner than anything else the company was doing. That's how big a business is possible. It's got to be supported, not just by private equity, by government, regulators, etc. Okay, so that's two things, right? That's both involved with uranium. Third thing, the company, the Chinese industry, rare earth industry, 10 or 12 years ago decided they were going to use the chemical mineral monazite as a source of rare earths. Okay, why? Because what they use now, what's called bastnasite, that's what they mine in Bayanova in Inner Mongolia, and that's what MP mines in California. That has 16% useful rare earths. Monazite has 24%. One little problem: monazite's radioactive. So China today Monazite is 1 to 2% of what's called heavy mineral sands, another thing you've never heard of, right? See black sand on the beach? That's heavy mineral sand. It's zirconium, titanium, and 1 or 2% rare earths. China last year processed 6.5 million tons of heavy mineral sands. From that, they produced nearly 100,000 tons of monazite, which is 60% rare earths. Okay? Now, why did they do that? Because they're concerned that their big project in Bayanova is becoming non-economical. Heavy mineral sands are there for the taking. They produce zirconium. We import zirconium from guess where? China. Titanium, they process almost all the world's titanium. And they're getting most of it now from heavy mineral sands that they import to China Nuclear Corporation, takes out uranium and thorium from the monazite, and it sends it to the Chinese customer. Okay? In the United States, we have exactly one company that can do that, Energy Fuels. Energy Fuels is the only licensed repository to which you can send monazite. You can send anything anywhere for 90 days. Okay? So if I want to import monazite to, let's say, the delicatessen on the corner, I can probably do that. 90 days later, everybody shows up, AEC, NRC, APA. What did you do with it? You have 90 days to dispose of residues and waste. Okay? Nobody will touch monazite in the United States. Why? They couldn't, except Energy Fuels. Okay? So Energy Fuels, 6 years ago, bought some monazite from the American company Chemours. Chemours is a former DuPont subsidiary. They are our producer, among other things, of zircon and titanium ore. Okay? So they were processing heavy mineral sands out of Georgia. They had monazite left. Yes, USA, Georgia. They had monazite left over. What do they do with it? Well, the law in Florida, where they're processing, says you distribute it back into the ground so that the background radiation, is the same or less as it was before. They were doing that. Well, along came a Chinese buyer and said, hey, I'll buy it. Okay. They sold it to them for, maybe nothing, I don't know, because it was an advantage to them. It cost a lot of money to put it back in the ground. Okay. The Chinese were buying it, and along came Energy Fuels and said, what are you guys doing? Okay. They said, well, we're getting rid of a problem. There's no place to put it. He said, gee, I've got a home for it. Okay. So they said, well, how much will you pay? He said, nothing. I'll take it away. It wasn't exactly nothing to disclose. Okay. So he had a source of monazite. And he was the only guy that could take it in the United States because he's the only guy that can process it or store it. Okay. So one thing led to another. And they thought that was a very good idea to go into that business because here's what this is all public. This is what the Energy Fuels calculated. If we produce heavy mineral sands, let's say in Brazil, then with a partner, maybe Chemours, they will extract the zirconium and titanium, which are payable, good market, and we get the monazite. They pay us by giving us the monazite. What's our cost of monazite? Zero. It's true, except the freight. Okay. Now, as an aside, I have to tell you that when the Chinese ship monazite, they usually call it potatoes, beans, or something. They don't worry about UN regulations on shipping radioactive material. Okay, they always have another name for it. Okay, but we don't do that. So the point is, you can ship monazite to the United States. You just can't keep it, can't store it. It can't be, for your old age or something. You have to take the radioactivity out. Only one place can do that. So you take out the uranium, anything over 400 parts per million uranium is payable for Energy Fuels. Any material with over 400 ppm. I know it sounds very low, but that's okay. They take some uranium out, they take the thorium out and store it. Monazite can be up to 6% thorium. They take the thorium out and store it, and what are they left with? A very high quality rare earth mineral concentrate. So I was the surveyor on the Linus plant in Malaysia. The government hired me to see whether they should issue a license. Okay. That was 13 years, 14 years. Okay. So I had access to the books of the Linus Corporation. The Linus plant in Australia, 20,000 ton monazite separation plant, cost $400 million to build in 2012. Okay. I don't know how much inflation has been since then. So that's $20 million per thousand tons capacity. It's a 20,000 ton plant. It's the largest dedicated rare earth separation plant in the world. Why am I telling you all this? Okay, I'm getting to the point. So Energy Fuels took a look at that, and nobody's going to authorize that kind of money for a product that has no market. Okay, they built a 5,000 ton separation plant, 1/4 the size of the plant in Malaysia that Linus built, for $17 million. Now, they had a permitted site, water, power, and workers who had been doing solvent extraction, the separation method of choice, for 41 years. They didn't need any help. They designed the plant in-house, built it, $17 million. Okay. They then produced, I think a year ago, about 50 tons of high purity separated rare earth oxides, the material you use to make rare earth metal, the material you use to make magnets. Okay. They found an interested customer, POSCO Korea, who are extremely tough on meeting their specs. And they sent them a ton. They said, fine, this stuff is great. We want to know when you can ship us hundreds of tons like some metal and alloy. Okay. Well, it isn't going to happen right away, because what Energy Fuels did was realize that Chemours could never supply anything like that. Okay, and Chemours, not from Georgia, not from the USA, Georgia. Okay. So they went out, took a look. They found 3 heavy mineral sands deposits. One in Madagascar. Where is that? Okay. Go as far as you can south in Africa, and then go east. Madagascar is a very big island. Okay. Then they found there the world's largest undeveloped supply of heavy mineral sand. Now, it's always been there. I was involved in a project like that 15 years ago. Okay, we couldn't do it. And the people first told the company, you can't deal with them. You know how those South African countries are. They don't agree. They don't follow the rules. Blah blah blah. Okay. Not only did they get the deposit, they got the permit from the Madagascar government to develop the mine. Okay. So how did they do that? How are they going to do that? They bought a company in Tanzania, and that company is called Base Resources, an Australian company. They're producing revenue-generating, profitable heavy mineral sands operator with one problem. Their deposit was running out. Energy Fuels bought the company and transferred the people. They're going to now develop the Madagascar project. These are experienced heavy mineral sands miners, and Chemours is going to process zirconium and titanium out. The monazite remaining will make it the largest heavy mineral sands project in the world. That's one. Two, in Brazil, in the state of Bahia, they bought a heavy mineral sands deposit. They're developing it with some of the people from Base Resources who are left over from the African project. In Australia, where the president of the company is from, they entered into a joint venture with a company called Astron. Astron has a deposit of heavy mineral sands in Australia called the Donald deposit. What? Donald Duck, Donald Trump, the most. Okay. The point is that Astron's deposit is the richest deposit in heavy rare earths of any mineral sands deposit in the world. And I'm considered the expert. And I'm telling you, I've never seen anything as rich as this. Okay, I was shocked when I was shown the data because the company said, we're going to produce 250 tons a year of dysprosium terbium, the key heavy rare earths. I said, from what? From the 1% contained mineral in the monazite? They said, let's show you something. Couldn't believe the analysis. Fantastic. One of a kind. Okay. So all these three are underway. And by the end of the decade, the plan is to be processing, ready for this? 50,000 tons of monazite a year. That will give 30,000 tons of rare earths. 50,000 tons of monazite. Only one place on Earth does more than that, and they don't do it they do it among a dozen companies. That's China. So I was joking with somebody this morning that when the board of directors of China Nuclear gets together, the only American company they'd ever dream of talking about is Energy Fuels. They don't care about MP, they don't care about Linus. None of those are competitors. Energy Fuels is a competitor because China is going to monazite 50% more rare earths than bastosite. And they don't like competitors. And they had grabbed up most of it, and Energy Fuels got the best of the rest. Okay? So from now on, there's just two companies to be looked at in rare earths. I'm saying China Nuclear represents all the Chinese companies, okay? and Energy Fuels. That's rare earths. Okay? That's a coming attraction. In my opinion, by 2030, if this all happens, Energy Fuels will be the lowest cost producer of rare earths in the world. That includes the People's Republic of China. Guarantee it. Okay? So that's a coming attraction. We need uranium now. They've got a uranium mill. They need more processing time. That means they need a higher price for uranium. Government has no idea what's the market for uranium. Uranium prices got to go. That's the only way to save us. Energy Fuels is going to save us, all of us. Otherwise, you better invest in can't make it. Oh, I forgot. You're against fossil fuels, so forget the kerosene. And it'll have to be beeswax. That you do realize most of the wax comes from non-organic sources. So except beeswax. And I think Cardinal Wolsey had beeswax candles. Very expensive. But you'll get used to it. Or you can maybe see in the dark. Oh, sorry, am I done? Time up? Okay, sorry. Yeah.
Hi, Jack. Have you heard anything about recycling of uranium from depleted uranium sources? There's a South African company that's told me about it.
Well, it's so dangerous. Uranium recycling or rust. That is extremely expensive and dangerous. I mean, I guess you can do it. In fact, nuclear fuel reprocessing is a big business in France and Japan.
Yeah.
We stopped doing it because we're too smart to do it. The French do it, of course, for their second biggest fleet of reactors in the world. The Japanese do it because they're bringing their
Okay. Another observation is why wouldn't this market be a regular market?
What market?
The uranium market. You're saying that the price has got to go up. If there's little supply and there's a lot of demand, the price will go up.
I'm an engineer and I'm a finance guy. That's you guys tell me the answer to that. I have no idea. I would think you're stupid, but who am I to say? I'm stupid. Who knows?
And for one more last question.
So I'm sorry, it's more of a financial question, but it ties into everything you said. When you look at the stock price, it's been going down for a couple of years. when you look at, and even that's okay, but the companies last year lost like $37 million. How do you get to cash flow positive and by when?
If it were up to me, I'd sell the current inventory because it's profitable, okay? And I really pressed on things like developing that medical isotope business, and I'd go forward as fast as I could in the rare earth business. I can't tell you the answer because I don't understand. Some learned people in this audience know a lot more about this than I do. I don't understand why their stock is low. I really don't. I get it that they're not making a lot of money, okay? But the potential is fantastic. It's so much better than so many of these juniors. I mean, 1,000 times better. But you have to understand what the company is doing and what the demands and needs are of the United States. People just don't pay attention. They don't know.